It's a very intoxicating situation. The senses are so strong, and the desire to enjoy sense gratification is so strong, you actually can't hear anything, can't understand anything, and too much addicted to sense enjoyment, too busy enjoying, because they think they're going to get what they want. They're going to get it. They're going to get it. They're going to get it. And actually, they do get it. And then it lasts for a little while, and then, so what? Then they start looking again for something else to enjoy. This is the nature of the sense gratification. It's never satisfied. It's always pulling and pulling. More. And it's never satisfied. So it burns like fire, desire for material enjoyment. So the spiritual master extinguishes that fire. Representative of the Lord extinguishes that fire. By bringing the living entity in contact with the devotional potency of the Lord, and the fire is extinguished. Super excellence of devotional service. And in this age, chanting and hearing the holy name, the messages of Godhead. So Prabhupada continues. This is the law of nature. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya dharatyaya mame vaye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. Translation. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. End translation. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 15:7, the Lord says, Mamayavam so jivaloke jiva bhuta sanatana manakshashtan indriyani prakriti-stani karsati. Translation. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. And I'll read that again. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So that's who we are. We're eternal fragmental parts of the Supreme Being. In contact with material nature, we're in a conditioned state. We're struggling very hard with material senses and a material mind. It's not that we don't have senses and we don't have a mind, but in a conditioned state, in contact with the material energy, we're identifying with the material senses, the material mind, as being the self. Struggling with that. There's nothing else you can do with it except struggle with it. It's an unnatural situation. Well, it's like the fish out of water. What does he do? He flaps around. You know, it's like he's not in the right environment. The fish, put him back in the water. He swim along very nicely. But on the shore, he's like gasping and flapping. So that's the spirit souls in contact with material nature. Is like the fish out of water, struggling very hard. The living entity's struggle for existence within the material world is due to his rebellious nature. Okay, here we go. We are going to look at that word rebellious, see what the dictionary says, because again, we think we know what these words mean. We use them all the time. And yet, when we look at some of their other usages, we get new lights. All right. No surprises in rebellious, though. It's all kind of right there. Defiant. We knew that. Disobedient. Oh, yes. Insubordinate. Unruly. Mutinous. Ah, that's a good one. Mutinous. Mutiny. Want to take over. That's what mutiny is on the high sea. They don't like the captain. Everybody gets together, all the crew, and they do a mutiny. They throw him overboard, and then they take over. Mutinous. Wayward. Oh, I don't know what this is. Obstreperous. Recalcitrant. Intractable. A lot of words there. Rebellious. Another way to look at it. Defying or resisting some established authority. Inclined to rebel. Pertaining to rebellions, yeah. Okay. Refusing to obey rules or authority or to accept normal standards of behavior. Dress. Break the rules. Okay, so that's rebellious, according to the dictionary. Going against the rules. Taking a subordinate position to a superior authority. Not recognizing Krishna's superiority and his supreme dominion over everything. We just learned from Bhagavad Gita that the living entities are eternally his fragmental parts. So what happens when a fragmental part decides it doesn't like being a fragmental part? It becomes insubordinate. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for the living entity because he's part and parcel. He's rebelling against his own source. So the living entity's struggle for existence within the material world is due to his rebellious nature. Unless a living entity surrenders to Krishna, he must continue this life of struggle. So that's why there's no way out of the cycle of birth and death. And going to the heavenly planets and back to earth and then to the hellish, and then going to hell and getting punishment, and then hopefully getting a little rectified because there was some corrective measures and some punishment. And then going back up to the heavenly planets and then more sinful activities on the earthly planet. There's no way out of that unless a living entity surrenders to Krishna because he's part and parcel of Krishna. So I have to continue this struggling lifetime after lifetime eternally. So unless you come in contact with the representative of the Lord who can stop that. He can stop that. Because surrendering to the Lord is not surrendering to the Lord was the problem, is how we got here. So the solution is to surrender to the Lord. And the way that's done is by surrendering to his representative. That's why they can stop that. That's the end of the rebellion. When the rebellious conditioned soul acknowledges the bona fide representative of the Lord takes instruction from them and renders service, then they're not rebellious anymore. And they're not rebellious anymore, they're on their way back home, back to Godhead. This is the great mercy of the Vaishnavas, is they can do that for someone. And they can do that for everyone. And the great mercy of Lord Chaitanya's movement is he wants to do that for everyone. And he's making it extremely simple. Just hearing the holy name of the Lord and chanting the holy name of the Lord. Then that rebellious nature, he's accepting that rebellious nature has been stopped if someone will do those things. Even though they're still struggling with trying to control their senses and they have maybe so many bad habits. If they continue to take that subordinate position of chanting and hearing, then all that rebellious nature will be gone. And Prabhupada said you can chant 24 hours a day. You arrange your life so you can chant 24 hours a day. With the system of Bhakti Yoga as presented in the Krishna consciousness movement, it allows to go on with one's life, working, maintaining family, and so many things, and teaches how to offer all the activities to Krishna. And then that rebellious nature goes away. You accept subordinate position under the direction of the actual representative of the Lord. The Krishna consciousness movement is not a fad. This is Prabhupada continuing. It is a bona fide movement intended to promote the welfare of all conditioned souls by trying to elevate everyone to the platform of Krishna consciousness, which means getting rid of that rebellion. If one does not come to this platform, he must continue in material existence perpetually, sometimes in the upper planets, sometimes in the lower planets. As confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 21:18. Kabu svarge utaya, kabu narake dubaya. The conditioned soul sometimes descends into nescience, sometimes gets relief by being relatively freed from it. And this is the life of the conditioned soul. We were just discussing that. Up to the higher planets, down to the lower planets. Punishment in the lower planets, and then a little bit of relief, and then some rewards in the higher, and it goes on and on and on. And there's no relief from that unless one takes shelter of the representative of the Lord. Prajapati Daksha is trying to benefit the conditioned souls by begetting them, to give them a life with a chance for liberation. Okay, so this is the beginning of the universe, the creation, and they're not even here yet. All these conditioned souls that are being discussed, the eternal fragmental parts of the Lord sleeping within the Lord's body, they're not even here yet. And Dasha, he understands the desire of the Lord's to give them an opportunity. They'll need material bodies for that, so they can act out their material. They're rebellious already, but they'll need those material forms to act out in the material energy and have the opportunity to come into contact with the representative of the Lord. Prajapati Daksha understands that, and it's his service to procreate, bring them all here, all of us. Liberation means surrender to Krishna. If one begets children with the purpose of training them to surrender to Krishna, fatherhood is very good. Similarly, When the spiritual master trains the conditioned souls to become Krishna conscious, his position is successful. If one gives the conditioned souls a chance to become Krishna conscious, all his activities are approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely pleased, as stated here, pritaham. So Prabhupada shares sometimes his own personal realizations, and this is one of them. Krishna is very pleased with A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. His followers, his disciples, is like a father who teaches his children to become Krishna conscious. And His Divine Grace is doing that. If one gives the conditioned souls a chance to become Krishna conscious, all his activities are approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely pleased, as stated here, pritaham. Following the examples of previous acharyas, all the members of the Krishna consciousness movement should try to benefit the conditioned souls by inducing them to become Krishna conscious and giving them all facilities to do so. Such activities constitute real welfare work. By such activities, a preacher or anyone who endeavors to spread Krishna consciousness is recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, sometimes the disciples don't have direct instructions specifically for them to do a certain thing. But here we have an instruction that's for everyone, and it's very specific. I'm going to read it again. If one gives the conditioned souls a chance to become Krishna conscious, all his activities are approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is extremely pleased, as stated here, pritaham. Following the examples of the previous acharyas, all the members of the Krishna consciousness movement should try to benefit the conditioned souls by inducing them to become Krishna conscious and giving them all facilities to do so. All the members. Such activities constitute real welfare work. By such activities, a preacher or anyone who endeavors to spread Krishna consciousness is recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To be recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's said that we shouldn't try to see God, we shouldn't try to see Krishna, but we should act in such a way that Krishna will be pleased to see us. To try to see Krishna is really not possible. As we were hearing earlier about the how the mind can perceive the senses, but the senses cannot perceive how the mind is perceiving them. If you can follow that. The senses are very conscious of, the mind is very, very conscious of the senses and is directing their activities. But the senses are not conscious of how the mind is perceiving them and directing them. So they don't have that ability to perceive the mind. So Krishna is like that with us, his eternal fragmental parts, spirit, soul, in our conditioned state. We can't perceive Krishna in our conditioned state with our material mind and senses. Just like the senses can't perceive the mind, Well, the material senses and mind can't perceive Krishna. It's not that he's not there and he's not directing everything. Well, we can't perceive him that way. So if we act in such a way that Krishna is pleased, then we can perceive Krishna, because Krishna will reveal himself. Being pleased, he reveals himself. That's the only way to see Krishna, is if he reveals himself. Otherwise, he remains hidden. So, if one gives the conditioned souls a chance to become Krishna conscious, all his activities are approved by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's extremely pleased. Following the examples of the previous acharyas, all the members of the Krishna consciousness movement should try to benefit the conditioned souls by inducing them to become Krishna conscious and giving them all facilities to do so. Such activities constitute real welfare work. By such activities, a preacher or anyone who endeavors to spread Krishna consciousness is recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Lord himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 18:68 and 69, Ya idam paramam guyam mad bhaktesh vabidas yati bhaktim mai param kriva mam evasyat yasamsaya na cha tasman manusyeshu kaschin me priya kritama bhavita na cha me tasmad anya priyataro bhuvi. Translation. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end, he'll come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Jai Srila Prabhupada. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed. At the end, he'll come back to me. There's no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. And Prabhupada is giving the instruction that the members of the Krishna consciousness movement should all try to facilitate others to become Krishna conscious. And then Krishna will be very, very pleased by that, and they become recognized. And this verse really seals it. They explain the supreme secret to the devotees. Devotional service is guaranteed. At the end, he'll come back to me. There's no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Hare Krishna. Pretty clear. So, go on to the next verse, which is text 45. This is the Lord continuing, speaking to Daksha. He's very pleased with Daksha. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, the Manus, all the other demigods in the higher planetary systems, and you, Prajapatis, who are increasing the population, are working for the benefit of all living entities. Thus, you expansions of my marginal energy are incarnations of my various qualities. Krishna. Let me read that again. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, the Manus, all the other demigods in the higher planetary systems, and you Prajapatis, who are increasing the population, are working for the benefit of all living entities. Thus, you expansions of my marginal energy are incarnations of my various qualities. So these are the eternal fragmental parts of the Lord. Everything is an expansion of the Lord. Everyone and everything is an expansion of the Lord. But they're working for the benefit of all living entities. And so the Lord's qualities are manifest there. He has many qualities, but his qualities are manifest. Very harmonious, everyone working together to please Krishna. Prabhupada's commentary. There are various types of incarnations or expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The expansions of personal self, or Vishnu Tattva, are called Swamsa expansions. Whereas living entities who are not Vishnu Tattva, but Jiva Tattva, are called Vibhinamsa, separated expansions. Okay, getting a little detail here. The expansions of his personal self, Vishnu Tattva, are Swamsa expansions. Living entities who are not Vishnu Tattva but Jiva Tattva are called Vibhinamsa, separated expansions. Although Prajapati Daksha is not on the same level as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, he's compared to them because he engages in the service of the Lord. In the service of the personality of Godhead, it is not that Lord Brahma is considered very great, while an ordinary human being trying to preach the glories of the Lord is considered very low. There are no such distinctions. Regardless of whether materially high or materially low, anyone engaged in the service of the Lord is spiritually very dear to him. Yeah, that's the way it works. So nice. One may have a lot of material facility, so that means they have to use a lot of material facility in the service of the Lord. They have to use everything in the service of the Lord. They have a lot of material facility, they have to use that. They have to use everything. If a living entity doesn't have much material facility, but they use everything that they have, that's accepted and very dear to the Lord. They used everything they had. If they didn't have it, they can't use it. Doesn't mean they're not acceptable because they didn't have some material facility. They weren't holding back. Whereas someone who has a lot of material facility and gives a lot, but not everything, that's not going to work. I mean, it's okay, but the living entity who doesn't have much, but gives everything, that's really good. We see that so many times. There's so many instances of that. The way how Krishna's pleased by that. You give everything that you have. Because serving the Lord's not material. There's no material disqualification. Oh, you don't have a lot of this or that? Well, you can't serve. No. It's not like that. There's a couple of little examples that come out. There's the little spider, or the squirrel, or whatever it was. Something kind of materially insignificant, some living entity in a body that really didn't have too much to offer in terms of having a lot of responsibility for others and so on. And in building the bridge to Lanka to rescue Sita from the grasp of Ravana, Hanuman, he's very empowered, a lot of strength. He was the offspring of Vayu, the demigod of the wind. He was very powerful. He was taking mountain peaks, and placing them in the ocean to make a bridge from the mainland to Sri Lanka, the island where Sita was being held. And a very insignificant little living entity, he was a squirrel, a chipmunk, or whatever, was doing the best he could, putting some little pebbles in was all he could do. But he was helping. He was helping. And his devotional mood wanted to please Krishna. He wanted to please Ram. And at one point, Hanuman considered that this little insignificant entity was kind of in the way, because he had these big mountain peaks, and this little fellow was in the way. He didn't want to step on him, so just push him out of the way. So Lord Ramachandra reminded Hanuman that devotional service is on the absolute platform. It's completely transcendental, and it's not dependent on any material qualifications. And I'm relishing, not just accepting that it's some material service, I'm relishing the service of this living entity just as much as I'm relishing your service. So, there it is. There's no material impediment to devotional service. And then, of course, there's Kolave Sridhar in the Lord's appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And some of the Lord's disciples were very empowered. Sarvabhauma, he had many, many disciples, and then they had different talents and abilities. Mukunda could lead kirtan, and then, of course, there's Rupa and Sanatan, who became great scholars. They've recorded and written and illuminated the path of devotional service. There were many very empowered, powerful. King Prataparudra was a great devotee of the Lord. And then there was Kolave Sridhar. Sridhar. He was very, very poor. He maintained himself by making little cups from banana leaves, plantain leaves. He lived in a little hut. It had a hole in the roof. When it rained in. Very, very poor. He was giving half of whatever he made from these plantain cups and these banana leaf cups in the worship of the Ganges. And Lord Chaitanya used to like to go and get those plantain cups, banana leaf cups. He would eat off of them. He would take his prasadam off of them. But he wouldn't just buy them from Sridhar. He would dicker over the price. And he would make Sridhar so put Sridhar in such an awkward position that the Lord would insist that Sridhar was asking too much. And Sridhar was asking nothing, practically. Insignificant amount. He was living on nothing. And the Lord would insist that Sridhar was too high-priced. In the end, Sridhar would just give him the plates and the cups. So, because he loved the Lord. And so it was a huge sacrifice for him, his maintenance. But out of love, he would just give. So the Lord was accepting, was relishing. Well, you're not just accepting the service. All right, I'll accept. Put the food on the plate, I'll accept it. How it goes on with Krishna. He's relishing the mood of love of the devotee. He loved. He would go to Sridhar's all the time. And actually, when they marched on the Kazi, when they made this huge display, it was in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, is described that there were actually hundreds of thousands. There actually turned out to be millions. And the author says he has no idea where they all came from. All these people. To carry the torches and march on the Kazi. He has no idea where they all came from. But there were millions. Millions of people. It was a huge event. It wasn't an ordinary, political demonstration. It was a huge spiritual manifestation. He says millions of people came. He does not know where they came from. And they all marched on the Kazi. Made a huge display that the Kazi should not oppose, the government should not oppose the performance of the Harinam. And immediately after this huge display of opulence and power, and it was just phenomenal what happened. It was overwhelming. Right after that, same night, just a little bit later, the Lord immediately went to Sridhar, Kolaviraj Sridhar's little hut, and drank water out of an iron cup that he had there. The iron cup is not very nice. It was a cup he used for water. Sometimes devotees like to use things like stainless steel, very clean and nice. This was an iron cup. It's all Sridhar could afford, and he kept that. And the Lord wanted to drink out of that cup. So devotional service to Krishna does not depend on anything material. The Lord is looking to relish the devotional mood of his servant. Those are two. There's many more. Most likely unlimited. Even Gajendra could, we'll read that pastime a little bit later in the Bhagavatam, the elephant. What does an elephant have to offer? And the Lord was pleased by his prayers and calling out. So, it is not that Lord Brahma is considered very great, while an ordinary human being trying to preach the glories of the Lord is considered very low. There are no such distinctions. Materially high, materially low. Anyone engaged in the service of the Lord is spiritually very dear to him. In this regard, Srimad Madhvacharya gives this quotation from Tantra Nirnaya. There's some Sanskrit there. I'm going to skip over it. We'll continue with Prabhupada's commentary. From Lord Brahma down, all the living entities engaged in the service of the Lord are extraordinary and are called vibhuti. It's most likely a paraphrase of that. From Lord Brahma down, all the living entities engaged in the service of the Lord are extraordinary and are called vibhuti. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 10:41, Yad yad vibhutimat sattvam Srimad urjitam evacha tad eva vagachatam mamate jom sa sambhavam. Translation. Know that all beautiful, glorious, and mighty creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. End translation. A living entity, especially empowered to act on behalf of the Lord, is called vibhuti, whereas Vishnu Tattva incarnations of the Lord, such as Matsya Avatar, are called vibhava. So vibhuti, living entities empowered to act on behalf of the Lord, and vibhava, the incarnations of the Lord himself, Vishnu forms. Vibhuti, vibhava. Vibhuti, vibhava. Hare Krishna.